Do the crows caw in threes? Three Crow takes on DeadInfested. Yes, that's right, DeadInfested, a man famous for his chat presence in many streams, including Artosis's. Will he bend the ear of the famous caster who also rages all the time because Protoss is too easy? I agree. Let's go into Pendulum and find out. Now, Three Crow is a storied man who has been around this project for a very long time, and he is spawning in the top right. He has selected Terran, and he is doing a meme strategy, because that's what Three Crow does. He's like an expert cheeser. He's the kind of guy that will just prank you all the time. And, you know, maybe he'll try to take you a little bit more seriously once you have acclimatized to the project, but he wants to introduce you to all the cheese and silly stuff, right? And I gotta tell you guys, this castover is gonna be a little bit of a different vibe. Last time we were looking at Hamster versus Shambler, or Nablime versus Mystery Meat, or Nablime versus Hamsters, back and forth, pretty good level play. That's not exactly gonna happen here as far as I know. I was told to expect silly stuff, which, you know, it could still be reasonable level skill play, but come on, let's be real. It's Three Crow. He's here to just prank forever. And, oh, look at that. Biddy B is actually spectating. That's cool. Now, I should mention that as DeadInfested, the Glacial Protoss in the top left versus the Midnight Green Terran of Three Crow in the top right, who is going Stockade first despite getting a fast gas. We should talk a little bit about the overall sort of makeup of these players. As far as I know, and I played DeadInfested on a couple matches on one of the new incoming maps for the competitive map pool, Victory Square by Balethal. I played a couple of matches where he asked me to play Zerg so he could practice against that. It happens to be probably my best race, so it wasn't exactly a very fair fight. I'm suspicious of the Scribe's placement. DeadInfested has been known to do some silly strategies in the past. And right now he's going Mass Lattice, or First Lattice, I should say. Mass Lattice is what I did to Three Crow after this. DeadInfested, my man, no matter what happens in this series, we've got 5 games to cast today, I would want to tell you, be wary. And don't feel too offended, because Three Crow did absolutely lose to just nothing but like over 300 vassals from me, and I took over the whole map. So, you know, I got you back. Regardless of what happens, what silly shit he does to you, I got you back. So Three Crows actually banked 174 gas and is adding a second stockade before building a single military unit. He's also added on the vestry. So if you guys are new to Starcraft, to Cosmetic Brood War rather, then the stockade is essentially the barracks, but it's cheaper. In terms of build space specifically. It's the same cost in terms of resources, but you can condense it a little bit faster, which means something a bit different for your SimCity, and there is indeed going to be, I think, the most uselessly placed Warden, but I guess it'll take shots at a Mason going down to try to expand in the back base. Okay, and we have a Shaman first, which... also interesting. What's he going to do with the Stockade? Cyprian. Okay. I don't know what Three Crow is planning. It's definitely something a bit silly. We do have one Vassal flying across the map, and a second Warden being started. Now, Wardens, the name for the Photon Cannon, warp in much slower, but they do have a very different attack style. I wouldn't be surprised if the Vassal just starts picking apart the Shaman, but it actually doesn't look like it was spotted. We do have a Cleric and a Cyprian. Cyprian will start to tickle the Vassal. Interesting scenes here. The Mason is attacking an anchor that was constructed. Now this Mason is at 7 HP, so you could just kill it. There you go. He figured it out. I'm kind of surprised that Three Crow didn't try to like load it into the anchor and then unload it when the Shaman was there. This is already goofy. It was goofy from the word go, but so much gas was banked up and then used for healing, and we have the Wardens are creeping ever closer. The Vassals are growing in number, and we have a Huracan and a Cyprian alongside this Cyprian and the 2 healers slowly making their way across the map. By the way, the map is Pendulum by Veek7. I still haven't made blends for this yet, so he's unfortunately not able to show off the map in its, you know, total visual glory that it will eventually have. And you can see that the minimap is a bit condensed. Oh no, the Huracans are being pierced. And that Cleric really needs to try to heal the Cyprian alongside the Shaman, out-heal all of these Vassals. It's not going to happen. And honestly, I think Three Crow's strategy has failed completely, whatever strategy it was. And now he should be starting to see that there are indeed Wardens creeping forward into his base. So remember when I called these ones useless? I think they still genuinely would be, but the Scribe has been allowed to stick around, and now you're not going to be able to do anything there. So you're pretty close to the Wardens starting to be able to take pot shots at the Stockade. Like this Warden down here will attack this one and force it to lift off. Obviously, the Watchdogs are going to do fucking nothing. So 3 Crow's going to go to his natural and ignore it completely. Okay, that's a tactic. That is a move, right? Now, the Watchdogs you probably do actually want to keep because, yeah, otherwise the Vassals are just going to dive in here and start attacking them. And they don't have the best armor compared to some other structures. And the Masons aren't here to try to repair it. And also, they're not even landing, so that's a bit of an awkward position. Yeah, this one definitely could have landed. We even see a pile of being... Listen, DeadInfested is fine with this. He's like, yeah, whatever. And, yeah, I think 3 Crow is too busy typing. He's going the Shambler strategy. He didn't land either of his Watchdogs and has elected instead to just lose his Mavericks. And, okay, well, DeadInfested, congrats, my man. You managed to take it. Take the first game in the most goofy, stupid situation possible. If this is your first time ever watching Cosmonarchy Brood War, I want you to know that Vassals are a good unit, and 3 Crow is a goofy, cheesy player, and DeadInfested is just learning from the best at this point. This Watchdog is actually going to outdeal, you know, with all the repairs. Oh, never mind. Just barely not. He could finish this one, and the fact that he hasn't is definitely going to cost him. And there were no Wardens started over here, which is a little bit awkward. Cyprians are on the way. They'll be able to attack and shut down the Wardens. Although they are vulnerable to being attacked by the Vassals. Yeah, they're going to be focused down pretty quickly here. So, never mind. Forget what I said. Actually, the Vassal's now diving onto the Watchdog. Are you going to pull your workers to attack the Wardens, or are you going to try to repair the Watchdog? It turns out that the Watchdog didn't really matter. That effect that spawns on the Vassal corpses speeds up allies of the Vassal for a short amount of time. It doesn't really matter in this particular circumstance, but you imagine if you have Vassals over like a ground army of like, say, Zealots or something, then they suddenly get this speed boost when the Vassal dies, and it does end up working out pretty well. And now the Wardens are starting to finish. And I don't think 3 Crow can reasonably pick up and go again. Welcome to Bronze League Heroes. I'm your host, not Husky. The pylon is indeed going down. The Huraccans are trying to be repaired by, by the Masons, but it's not enough. And another pylon goes down instead. I love my life. So how long until 3 Crow concedes and we go to the next map? Or the next match, because it's on the same map. GG. 3 Crow does drop the first series. It is kind of a surprise. By the way, when I make these castover overlays, right, and we see DeadInfested on the bottom of the overlay, that obviously confers to the right-hand side as, like, the match score. DeadInfested is not favored versus 3 Crow, but I don't think 3 Crow is exceedingly skilled at the game, and he won't mind me saying this. You can kind of see this based on his tournament placements. And what I would say about 3 Crow is that he has fairly good project knowledge and understands how the game differs from CMBW or from Starcraft 1. And so people who are more used to Starcraft 1, even if they're higher skill than 3 Crow, are subject to getting owned by him. And in this case, he really didn't put his best foot forward. This is not his apex play. He can definitely play better than this, and I suspect he will play better than this when we get into match number 2. It was really hard to hold the duck face that whole time, but don't worry, I'm a professional, I know what I'm doing. DeadInfested, the Glacial Protoss, once again, keeping his same color, and the Midnight Green Protoss on the other side is 3 Crow, so top, left, top, right, those are the only spawns on this map, it's not a 4-spawn map. And I should mention that, yeah, I was talking a little bit about the minimap being small. I actually don't know if this is a huge problem. To me, it's not really that big of a deal, but I understand if some people think it's really annoying. I think it's really, like, I think it's dumb. It should be able to scale a bit better, but we currently don't have the solution to render it at, like, fragments of a size, right? You can't really render, like, sub-pixel or whatever. So, I mean, you can, but not in Brood War. So it doesn't seem super feasible. Although, Veek would be the guy to talk to about that, and not myself. Or X405, that legendary man, if he was still around. He was helping us with the iScript extender, and now, I guess, the iScript extended him, or something. I guess they truncated him, because he's no longer around. They truncated his time. Anyway, that gobbledygook doesn't mean anything to you if you haven't been around long enough to understand what that is. But let's just say once the iScript stuff is extended, you can expect a 4th race in Cosmonarchy Brood War. Now, PvP, 3 Crow did select Protoss for these subsequent games. I was actually on voice talking with him a little bit, but he didn't spoil any of the games for me. He just said that stupid stuff was happening. Although he did say that he retaliated against DeadInfested in a different strategy, so let's see what he ends up doing. They're both going gateways, and if... So, like, obviously that doesn't mean that... Maybe that's like the third game he was talking about or something. Oh, shit, Dead Infested putting a pylon down. These are 75 minerals a pop, so he does cancel it wisely. He's got an idle scribe back at home, and he's going to lose his scout to these two. He's draining mining time, so this isn't really too bad, especially that he kept it. Gateway about to finish for 3 Crow, and Hierophant is the first unit. So it looks like he's going to go for this as a response to the vassals. If they start waypointing in small quantities, Hierophants can tag units, and when they attack, because it's a completely new unit, this is not a unit that was originally in the game that has like a funky rename. The Hierophant, when it tags a unit, you start to lose movement speed. And if you get enough stacks, like enough auto attacks hit the same target, it builds up the debuff to start lowering attack speed as well. But it's like after 5 stacks, it lowers attack speed. The movement speed doesn't scale in a slow per stack. It's dead ahead. So we can see here, as soon as it targets it, right, the scribe is slowed, and now this scribe can go back to work on the mining or whatever. We do indeed have a lattice out. So the lattice, our name for the robotics facility, I think we should probably end up giving it like a completely new model at some point, because it's a completely different thing. And, you know, that's just par for the course, right? Like, we've changed the game a lot. And it looks like we have two... Did I see a lattice from both players? Indeed. There's a second pylon over here for redundancy power onto... I guess maybe nothing. Maybe... Yeah, I don't think that powers anything yet, so that's just expanding the build rate. But... yeah, here comes a Zealot. That was the first port of call here for the Dead Infested gateway, and obviously you can see here it's not going to be able to do too much. Can't really do anything versus the Hierophants. If you try to attack them, they just kite backwards. They're very nimble units, but obviously they don't have as much range as a Dracodon, our name for the Dragoon. The Lattice, compared to the Robotics Facility, it trains none of the old units. It trains completely new units. That's what was training the Vassals, which are those air units that many people think of as like, you know, discount interceptors or new interceptors or something like that. And that's what we have coming out over here. The Lattice here is training an Idol, which deals some splash damage, although the projectile can be dodged. It's a fairly slow-moving one, so Vassals in particular would be able to dodge it. Zealots would be able to dodge it, etc., etc. And the other thing to mention is it can train 3 other units in total. I will talk about those as we see them. Yeah, the Dracodon, our name for the Dragoon, is actually a pretty different unit now. I mean, it moves a bit slower than the stock Dragoon, but it has all of the range by default, and it deals less damage, but there's no damage types anymore, right? So we'll talk a little bit more about that as this battle unfolds. It's not like it deals reduced damage to, say, workers or something like that. It just deals full damage. So that's why they end up losing their mobility a little bit, but their pathfinding gets improved as well. So we're seeing a little bit of a poor target selection here and there by both players, but an attempt is made. Flash shielding is kicking in, so after not taking damage for 2 seconds, shields start to regenerate. We have a Golem here, and it's actually going to benefit from its new passive, because this is indeed pre-release. So every time you damage a Golem, it procs flash shielding for allies that are in nearby. Now this Dracodon is no longer nearby to it, so with the range damage dealt with, the Hierophant can now sort of kite backwards, and now as soon as you see this slow happening, yeah, you're going to see these reinforcements start to do some damage. 3 Crow floating a lot of money behind this. We'll take a look at his base in a little bit here after the battles are taking place. The Golem now focused down. Obviously, when you don't have any shields, you're not going to be proccing the passive anymore, the new passive, so these frontline tank sort of robotic infantry that is coming out of the Lattice for Dead Infested is in a case where, oh, we have a scribe pull. Interesting. So this is kind of neat because the Golem is forcing all of the sort of focus, but the scribes are now not really in a good spot to do anything. Here's a Dracodon fighting the Zealot from 3 Crow, going to be zoned away forever. Yeah, this is a lot of guaranteed damage, basically. He made this Warden because he was apparently fearing Vassals or some other air unit, and it's just not going to happen. So Dead Infested drops to the very, very fast, sort of bloodthirsty aggression from his opponent, just laying into him despite all the floated money. We saw the Scribe going towards the natural, and to me, I feel like if Dead Infested had actually dropped that Nexus, he would have been even more messed up. So he's still figuring out the timing of Protoss versus Protoss. That was probably his first time ever playing Protoss versus Protoss. So, or if it wasn't, it was like, you know, the last time he played it was a long time ago or something. So, at least in Cosmonic Brood War I'm talking about. And 3 Crow is now going to take his space. He's not taking his color. We have Palatinate Blue Protoss in the top right. That's Dead Infested. And the Snow Protoss on top left. The color, not the player. dude, I would like to see Snow's take on the new Acantor, which is our name for the Reaver. Could you imagine Snow if the Reaver shot Scarabs that didn't actually behave like units? They didn't have pathfinding. They never dudded. They just moved really slowly but could fly up cliffs, and they popped on the first unit that they hit, so they basically had like a collision associated with them that if it intercepts with another unit, it pops and deals the damage there. You're basically playing dodgeball. I want to hear Snow's laughter as he makes like a Terran player try to dodge with their, phalanxes or Goliaths or something like that. I think that would be beautiful. But DeadInfested is going to have to fight against this Snow energy coming out of 3-Crow. Will that actually be Acantors? We'll have to find out. They're a pretty veritable tier 2 unit now. The Lattice, which again uses the robotics facility graphic, is not at all like the robotics facility. It doesn't train shuttles, observers, or Reavers. All three of those units have new names and are in different locations. The Envoy shuttle and the Witness observer are in the Embassy Forge. Hey, you know what? At least it's a mirror matchup, so you guys will eventually sink in all the new unit names. It's actually a little bit hard for me to remember, because in the context of CMBW, I'm always primed to use the new names, because I'm so used to it by now. So it's sometimes difficult for me to pull, what was the old name again? So, yeah, but that's just because I play way more CMBW than I do StarCraft 1. And that's because I think it's better, but I'm also the creator. So take my thoughts with a grain of salt. And if you disagree, tell me why, because we're always looking to learn. Speaking of learning, DeadInfested was about to learn that you can steal gas. I mean, it has no impact. Oh, look, he actually has it. He's got the itty-bitty gas thing. That's really cool, really cute. We have Double Gate coming out of 3-Crow. Normally, what Mist does, and Mystery Meat is our probably our top player, or at least one of our top players, I would say, pretty handily. I still think that he'll probably end up winning Ascension 6, but we have to, or Ascension 5 rather, maybe Ascension 6. He's playing random in Ascension 6. But he seems to be a lock for, top 4 in all of these tournaments, and he hasn't missed a grand final yet. Oof! Scribe finally goes down, thanks to the Hierophant slowing it. But he likes to go for Gate Expand. Now, in PvP, it's obviously going to be a little bit different. Mirror matchups are always a little distinct. So I wouldn't be surprised if we end up seeing something a bit different. But also, these players are, DeadInfested is still learning, and 3-Crow is a cheesy fuck. So are we really going to see too much else? I don't know. That's something that we have to find out for ourselves as these games unfold. And thanks for joining, by the way. Thanks for popping in, seeing the video, checking it out. It's something new to most people. And to the people who it's not new to, well, I salute you as well. I will say we have a pretty insane conversion rate. Like, people who play it with other humans, I can only remember one person in recent history within the last year who has played with humans, like in FFAs or 1v1s, and just rage quit and never came back, or just lost interest or whatever. I might be forgetting somebody, so there is that. But, if not, I got pranked there because I ran out of disk space. Anyway, I was in the middle of talking about how, if nothing else, the fact that people stick around after trying it out, the vast majority of people just try it and they're like, oh my god, this is really cool. Even if it's not better than Brood War in their mind or even comparable, it might be something fun that they try out every now and then. We got a lot of diehard players who stick around and try to play it. Like, just recently, the Shambler and Nablime, two of our top players, played 16 games back to back. That was just this morning. And it's I think it was 16 games anyway. It's oh, okay, if you're going to do stuff like that, if you guys are just going to grind out the games like that, and they're not the only ones who do stuff like that, that can be a pretty big deal. And I'm a big fan of that. So anyway, we do have a move out from 3-Crow, once again being pretty aggro off the 2-gate, and DeadInfested is setting up for an expansion. I don't necessarily think that's going to pay off for him. He does get a pretty good initial engagement in this Hierophant, but then he can't finish the job and doesn't sort of kite backwards as more units are coming. He's also, crucially, building mostly low damage units. The Hierophant, the Ecclesiast, these are not going to be able to have the punching power of the Dracodons, who are shooting 15 damage a shot. Yeah, they don't have any armor pen, but does armor really matter? You're taking 15 and turning it into 14. If you're a Hierophant, that's not going to matter too much. We do see the Legionnaire. The Legionnaire marks a target when it attacks and then can teleport to them. So they're kind of speedier, less durable, less DPS focused zealots in a way, but they're much more mobile and they can overwhelm your target. That's why they're called Legionnaires, right? This is actually looking really, really scary here for DeadInfested. Oh, his Ecclesiast even gets stuck behind the pylon. He put down the Nexus in the middle of that attack, so he thought he could hold it, but now the pylon is getting attacked. I mean, this redundancy pylon would take care of it. He was making a Simulacrum from the Lattice. That's also something that doesn't deal great damage, and indeed, Dead-Infested does, in fact, GG. And oh, I don't even need to update my overlay there, because I updated it, spoiler, after the game ended. Wow, that's crazy. Yeah, and then saw that I had to unprank my recording. Anyway, we're back, and we did indeed see Dead-Infested GG. And 3Crow typed 1G, as in to say it's not even a good game. Ugh, Patooey, get out of my sight. I will say that 3Crow, he's taking this a bit more seriously now that he's lost that first match. He's like, oh, you're going to cannon rush me, are you? You're going to warden rush me, are you? Well, let me show you a warden, and then throws him in jail, you know. I don't know, some kind of joke like that. 3Crow is once again going to be in the top left. We're just sort of blazing through these games. I thought maybe I'd be sitting here casting for a little bit longer due to the fact that we're dealing with, 5 games, but apparently not. So this is I was told this is a best of 5, so if it's 5 games, then does that mean Dead-Infested wins, or did they just play all 5 for honor's sake? Or maybe the 5th game is a fraud, we'll find out. But anyway, Dead-Infested in the top right. He is the Dark Spring Green Protoss. I like that color, it's pretty neat. And of course, going up against the Glacial Protoss of 3Crow. For some reason on this map, we've gotten a lot of glacials in 3 out of the 4 games that we've seen so far, this being the 4th. Again, that's weird because like 2 of the games were 5 minutes long each. In 3 out of 4 games, we've seen glacial, so who knows? Something to think about. I think what probably happens is each race, we have it internally set so that there's certain colors that are prohibited on a race base. It's like Zerg can't get some fancy color that's supposed to look more regal, and so it like didn't fit with their theme or anything like that. A while ago, we defined these rules. And so I think as a result, the RGB matcher that Veek implemented to try to make it so that you don't ever get too many clashing colors that are really hard to see when you randomly get colors, which apparently Remastered doesn't even support. I don't know how that's possible. Like, you can randomly get like pink and purple or something like that in the same game, which seems like it should be prohibited. Because we've got over 100 colors, and Remastered has, what, like 20 or 30 or something like that. I don't want to undersell it, but I don't play Remastered, so I have no idea what its color is. If you know how many colors they have, post it in the comments, please. I would like to know. But yeah, it's definitely something that I'm like, oh, okay, that's weird. Dead-Infested going for a Lattice in the background. I suppose here the Gateway Lattice is something that he wants to stick around with. We did see a Manor Pylon to stick one of these scribes into No Man's Land. And, that's not a bad idea. We do see that from Protoss players in Starcraft 1 sometimes. Pylons in this game have less durability, and you could at least be attacking it with a scribe that can't do anything. That would be a thing, but looks like Dead-Infested maybe he's not used to that, or maybe he hasn't even noticed it yet. I think he has, because he just tasked workers onto gas, so you would think he has. We have a 2-gate again. I think by this point, Dead-Infested will know, hey, I'm not going to expand anymore because my opponent is going 2-gate, and he's done that the last 2 games. So what's going to happen here? He's still getting owned by this pylon. It's also funny to me that the Hierophants were initially a reaction. As far as I remember from what 3Crow told me, the Hierophants were supposed to help versus vassals. And no vassals came in the subsequent games, but he still used the Hierophants to great effect to sort of disrupt those armies. Because, like, you can kind of think of the Hierophant in the same way you think of the Ecclesiast. These 2 new units for the Protoss out of the Gateway are units that you build for the purposes of supporting an army that already exists. And by themselves, they can be pretty cool as far as, like, slowing down air units that are incoming or slowing down melee units that are incoming. We saw that in the second game, where the Hierophants were able to pick apart the much more durable Zealot compared to its stock Starcraft counterpart. Oh my goodness. He has to destroy his enemy's pylon and his own pylon. Now this is not called efficiency. Anyway, Dead-Infested having some problems. But going up against 3Crow, who's also got the double pylon and going into Lattice. So the one thing you can say is that if Dead-Infested can safely expand, which would be great back here instead of down here, that would be pretty ideal. We do see an idol out for him, so he's got some splash. The Simulacrum, it's not going to be super effective. I'll get into the Simulacrum explanation for new players later on once I finish this point. Like, the main thing that is important about the Hierophant and the Ecclesiast is that they supplement an army that already exists. They don't do great damage by themselves. They can debuff an army. If you're a Hierophant, you can debuff your opponents. And if you're an Ecclesiast, every time you shoot a target, if any of your units or your allies' units are within that targets like 2 or 3 range of that target, they get shields back. So you're proccing flash shielding all the time. You're healing flash shields, or you're healing shields, and when you heal shields, you proc flash shielding as a general rule. And that ends up being pretty significant, obviously. And in fact, DeadInfested is going to go for a Nexus. So sort of rolling the dice here. His opponent has a much bigger army, but 3-Crow is not moving out this time around. He wants to add Manifolds, which are kind of like... They're kind of like Drakodins, but like half. Like half a Drakodin in terms of damage and durability, but they're a little bit more mobile than Drakodins, and you might be able to essentially win more with them. They can kind of be... They're almost like a stimmed Maverick, or something like that. A stimmed Marine. Something like that, right? You can kind of think of them like that. And, they can use flash shielding to great effect because obviously they're constantly moving around a little bit with their extra mobility. And speaking of, we do see a bit of a march. So we only have 1 Manifold with this army, but we have a Golem to sort of act as the front line. We have 3 Legionnaires. We have 3 Ecclesiasts, 2 Hierophants, and a Drakodin. So a little low on upfront damage. And if the Simulacra can get kind of good engagements and kind of kite backwards in the middle of taking shots, they can actually use their passive, which is Auto Vitality. When they take hull damage, after 5 seconds of taking hull damage, assuming they're still alive, they split and copy themselves. So they basically create a new Simulacrum with the same amount of HP. Now, the Golem gets nuked immediately for 3-Crow. He's trying to focus down the Idol to deal with the splash, but that's playing into DeadInfested's hands as he's debuffing his opponent's ranged units and then focusing them down with the Drakodins. Not great focus fire coming out over here from really either player. 3-Crow had pretty good coordination to specific targets, but he didn't really pick good ones. He picked the Idol when the splash damage that it was dealing was fairly minor in the grand scheme of things, and then he didn't deal with the Drakodins, which were dealing pretty consistent damage. So I felt like that was probably his main focus. He maybe overly relied on trying to kill things like the Simulacrum, and that definitely didn't end up working out for him. Now, he has Zealots, which would have gone great with that Golem, but now that the Golem is gone, that's not going to happen too much. And I think he should be focusing down like 1 Drakodin here and then falling back, but he's actually going to lead with the Manifolds and the Drax. And yeah, one of them is going to go down. So at this point, they've traded 2 Zealots for 2 Drakodins, but the Manifolds are going to pop pretty easy. You can very, very easily focus those down. And actually, if Deadinfested had a little bit more focus on his APM, a little bit more micro, he could have led forward after that Manifold popped and killed this Drakodin that was tagged by the Hierophant, since it's so slow, and you can reapply the tag very easily. DeadInfested going for a Rogue Gallery. He's a big fan of that particular structure. Build some more specialist units. That's where the Kabbalist Dark Templar lives now in Cosmonarchy Brood War. And it's accompanied by a new ranged infantry unit, the Vagrant, as well as the Barghest, which is a cloaked flyer that reveals itself when it attacks and has multi-target. Let's see what this engagement looks like. DeadInfested once again kind of caught slipping, but he has some more units here. He's got the defender's advantage of being closer to his production, and even though he's not really focus firing these Drakodins super well, he was able to do some pretty good damage to his opponent. And the Hierophant wasn't within range to actually apply its debuff, it looks like there, so that didn't end up working out super well. Adding another gate. Rogue Gallery spinning with the Barghests. Adding more pylons. This isn't for supply, so I'm not sure what's up with that. He wants redundancy pylons for something he's going to build later. 3-Crow is now at a very stark economic deficit since he doesn't have an expansion. He's down by 10 workers, which actually tells me that maybe DeadInfested wasn't producing workers this whole time, because how would he only have an advantage of 10? Adding a 4th gateway. So going up to 4 gates with the Rogue Gallery and the Lattice, which is... A lot of the structures for DeadInfested are kind of idle right now. You can hardly see the Barghest over the Rogue Gallery, but it's there, I promise. The one thing that should be mentioned, too, is that when you're Protoss, because your tech is sort of scattered all over the place, but you don't have tech requirements, like the other races need to build these specific explicit tech structures that unlock the next tier of tech. And for Zerg, it's very expensive on gas, and for Terran, it's marginally or moderately expensive on both resources. Like the Atlas, their tier 2 for Terran is 600, 600. And then the Iral Iris for Zerg, tier 2 for them, is 450, 900. And that's very expensive as an upfront investment. But then you get all of your tier 2. And so the question becomes, as Protoss, you can essentially peak your tech tree by getting up to like 1 structure from tier 2, in this case the Rogue Gallery. And you can still exist otherwise on tier 1. Or you can even go straight from tier 1 to tier 3 if you want. Like, that's definitely something that you have the power to do. But at this point, I'm a little surprised that DeadInfested has added some more structures, but then for a while he wasn't actually producing them, and he's totally abandoned the Lattice, right? The Lattice has gone dark. Conversely, all of the structures for 3-Crow seems to have recently produced units. He's added a Grand Library, which is, as you might expect, is home to some very powerful Templar units, Templar-esque units. We've got the Amaranth, which is a... it doesn't deal... Let me think about how to describe the Amaranth. Basically, the Amaranth deals more damage than a Zealot, and every point of damage it deals goes to its shield. So it has shield steal, you can think of it as, instead of life steal. Life steal is a Zerg thing, by the way. More on that later if we ever see it. But again, this approach was a little bit botched by 3-Crow. His front line is sort of scattered in the back, and now the Barghests are engaging, proccing a lot of, wounding a lot of these crowd control units, these splash units, since they have multi-target, so they can attack multiple targets at once. Amaranths are only now starting to do some damage, and at that point, the back line is all destroyed. So pretty good flank from the Barghests. One of them does end up getting sniped. And what is 3-Crow going to be able to do at this point, right? He's got idle structures. He doesn't have much coming. He's building an Atreus, which is kind of like a souped-up Drakodin, you can think of it as, like a tier 2 Strider. But you need a lot more than just one of them to hold back this army. I think at this point, DeadInfested realizes, oh man, I've got maybe more production, definitely more eco based on the stuff that he's been sending at me, and I have way more units that are alive because, he attacked into me with a bit of a botched engagement. So only a couple of units have managed to scarper off home. And as a result, this Nexus, which is about to finish, is just going to get attacked. And 3-Crow, he's not going to cancel it, and that means that he's going to have to really try to stake his claim in defending it. And I wouldn't necessarily say cancel it, but how can you possibly defend in this situation? Your own units are kind of getting botched by the ramp. Pretty good positioning from DeadInfested here to try to take advantage of that. The Idols are dealing a lot of damage as well as the Drakodins. The count of Striders is way higher here for DeadInfested. He's just going to run straight up the ramp, and I think he's good to equalize this. There's no sort of ace in the hole. The Grand Library is dark right now, not training anything. And that is going to pretty much seal 3-Crow's fate. He doesn't have anything coming. On top of the production, DeadInfested can just pick off those units. Yeah, okay, you got one Warden. It's going to kill a single Drakodin, but is that really going to be enough for you? And yeah, at that point, 3-Crow is, he's slow to throw in the towel. He's slow to say GG. He's going to even pull his scribes, but I'm sure he knows that the writing is on the wall. His opponent, in the background of this, the Barghests are finally on their way over, and they're going to start attacking the workers if they are even allowed to. This Warden has killed 3 units somehow. It might even get a 4th. There it goes. A Hierophant is dead. Scribes pulled yet again. Yeah. This is definitely a super GG moment. I would say if one thing 3-Crow could do, it would be to recognize better when he's clearly dead, because this is, maybe it's fine for him, and maybe it like kind of annoys his opponent, and that's sort of what he's thinking about. But I would just imagine, as he's trying to create a scribe vortex here, I would just imagine it's like, isn't it better to just sort of mentally unlink from this game and then go to the next one if you have like a playoff series or something? GG finally called. And DeadInfested will equalize our score 2-2, which means, is 3-Crow just going to Giga Rush him again? We're going to find out in our final game on Pendulum. So we finally got to see a little bit of a longer game on Pendulum, and now the yellow yellow Protoss of 3-Crow against the Palatinate Blue Protoss of DeadInfested. DeadInfested reprising his color from the previous game. I think, no, he was Dark Spring Green, but he was Palatinate Blue in another game that he had this spawn in, so that was game 3. Man, they all blend together and it's that fast. But hey, that one took a little bit longer. Let's see what else is in store for us. These Protoss versus Protoss matches have been interesting because you get to see the dynamic of like when to expand is kind of the same, right? It's like, oh, if I expand too fast, then I cut military production. It's just that now that you have more options for military units, like what are you going to do? What's your answer with that? And even though Drakodins are essentially Dragoons, but a little bit different in terms of stats, and there's some very important differences, but they're clearly like still inspired by the Dragoon idea for a unit. I do feel like as a result of that, they're probably the safe go-to. Like maybe you won't win a game if you go only Drakodin for the first couple of units that you make, but you probably won't lose the game either. So I think gate first makes sense. Maybe one gate Drak into an expansion makes sense. And I'm not 100% sure if the lattice, which is being opened by 3-Crow here, is going to give too many advantages, because a Drakodin or a Hierophant or anything like that really just shoos away early vassals. You'd really need a huge clump to defeat Protoss Striders, because they have pretty high durability, fairly reasonable mobility. And vassals have slowed down a lot since their initial version, like the balance updates have hit. And that's another thing, by the way. We make balance updates pretty frequently. So if you guys think something is OP, and then you can demonstrate it by showing without a shadow of a doubt it is OP, then we will respond to that. We will adapt to that. Crouching Tiger Hidden Pylon being warped in here for Dead Infested, or no, in Dead Infested's base. Well, it's for Dead Infested. 3 Crows leaving him a gift. And as soon as the scribe is spotted, yeah, it was actually canceled anyway. The scribe, I don't think it was spotted, but I think 3 Crow realized I don't have enough minerals to produce out of double lattice and also, warp in, early wardens. Speaking of, we actually see, so it's so interesting. This used to be everybody's response when they saw early air units. They put one static defense structure in their mineral line, and they would just try not to worry about it. I think the superior option is when your opponent is going air, which you can kind of do by having your scribe continuously scout out mass lattice and maybe more vassals pop out of these while your scribe is still there or something like that. Then, oh, okay. My response is I'm going to build some striders like Dracodons off of the one gate, and then I'm just going to expand to get an economic advantage because there's no kill pressure. He can only harass me. And then my units can defend my mineral line, and then because look, there's 3 wardens being warped in. That is enough for a Nexus and a scribe. So Dead Infested could already have another Dracodon on the way, and a Nexus, and this would be without the wardens. But his one Dracodon is going to ward off these early vassals, and then okay, I scouted 3 lattices. This guy's incredibly all in on the lattice vassal spam. So what is going to be the response? Well, how about then at that point, that's when I think, okay, I really need to do some work on building more units and maybe some static defenses. Dead Infested hasn't discovered that there are 2 other static defense structures Protoss have. The Engram, a very expensive but very powerful, like splash damage cannon type thing, which is like a tier 3 tower. And then the tier 2 tower is the Matrix, which attacks up to 4 units at once with something that doesn't deal as much damage as an individual warden shot, but it's kind of comparable. And I think that's important because one of the things that you're going to see is like 1 Matrix instead of 3 wardens would have served the purpose because vassals, when they're also being attacked by Hierophants and Dracodons and etc., are just not going to be able to survive. Maybe 1 Matrix, 1 Warden. That way, like, the Matrix can stop any of them from having shields by the time the Warden kills 1 vassal. So, like, if they really try to hard commit, then they're going to get owned. That could also work. But look, another one. There's 600 minerals in Wardens here. And look at how much that's delaying him. Meanwhile, 3 Crow is only now harvesting... Well, with 1 scribe, he's harvesting some gas. I don't know what his transition plan is, but right now he's just going to keep producing vassals. When I pranked 3 Crow by constantly building nothing but vassals, which happened the evening of this game being played, like, an hour later or something, I did absolutely prank him, mostly by... I did mine a little bit of gas, but the only thing I spent the gas on was a crucible to speed up the production rate of vassals. Because there's a new Protoss production structure or utility structure called the Crucible. You can return resources to it, so it acts as like a forward town center if you want. But you can also use it to just enchant your structure's production rate. We're probably going to remove the town center aspect of it and just leave the Nexus as the only town center that you have as Protoss. But the main idea that I would say is... the key sort of thematic aspect of it is definitely, enchanting your production structures, empowering them, making them move a little bit faster, produce a little bit faster. Hey, this scribe didn't end up getting killed, or it didn't bite the dust. No expansion back here. We now have 23 vassals. Not really much crowd control. We are seeing some Barghests in play. And yeah, this amount of vassals will absolutely start tearing stuff around. You really need to start worrying for your life if you have this. The Barghest could be attacking this whole time. There we go. It'll finally start doing so. Kite backwards here, not getting focused down. The Wardens instead are the ones doing that. Down to 14, 13 vassals. Yeah, the count is still dropping. Only 11 now. Another Warden being made. I don't know if that's the right call. The pylons are being focused down, but gotta have some fear about that. And yeah, suddenly his rogue galleries are empowered. 2 Barghest versus 8 vassals do not win that fight, but you can at least do some pickoffs while the 3 Crow's attention is elsewhere. He's adding yet another lattice. Yeah, just add more lattices, bro. You need more vassals. This is what Mesk would say. Mesk would say, you just need more vassals. I think Dead Infested should definitely be building more units, more than defensive structures. But you know what? The first game was clown. I think this game is also very clown. Absolutely pranked forever. Like, look at this. One shot with a Barghest would have killed that other vassal, and then he still would have been down to just the 10 that he's got. But at this point, he's been allowed to kill the Rogue Gallery, which, realistically speaking, I think he shouldn't have been allowed to do. But now there's a third Barghest out. The Gateway has been idle, despite all the money that Dead Infested has. And 13 vassals are here to try to do the job. But now, yeah, these Wardens are finishing. The Barghest should have engaged a little bit sooner, so the Warden will actually pop as a result. But look at that, 5 vassals from 13. A pretty big loss here, and you know the Rogue Gallery can just keep on building Barghests. We can add more structures. Yep, just put it in the same spot. When Keen did this in one of the games he played against 3Crow, oh, this scribe finally died. A Warden over here. Dude, this is so all in. 3Crow will finally think about taking an expansion, but he's going to have to pause his vassal production to do so. And his vassals are all the way on the other side of the map. I honestly think we could see an evolution of this game, if you want to call it evolution. I would probably call it devolution, but we could see Barghests versus vassals, and just see like who can win the micro fight, basically. Because when you see such a large number of vassals, like when you saw 23 enter the base, you do have to be a little terrified. It's just, I don't know, man. Surely there can be more. But it's just Wardens. He's just building more Wardens. The one thing you can say about Wardens is that if you have as many Wardens as there are vassals, vassals probably can't win. But that's kind of unlikely. Admittedly, the Warden does only cost twice as much as a vassal. So every time it kills 2 vassals, it's paying for itself. All right, we've got 5 Barghests leaving the building, 2 more on the way. Dead Infested has 650 gas. Is he just going to build a Star Sovereign? I hope we see a Star Sovereign. Come on, close us out in style. Tell me something good. Show me a good joke. That's a operator. You can do that in the you can do that to Dad somehow. I forget how you do that. We have a bot in this Discord server called Deputy Dad. And there's like a thing you can do where you could say, computer, tell me a joke. Computer, tell me a good joke, and computer, tell me the best joke ever told, or greatest joke ever told. I can't remember the exact wording. There's certain things you can do. A lot of hidden stuff like that. Anyway, the workers are now going to be under duress. A synthetic synod is the angle of attack here. It's actually going to be canceled. It didn't need to be. So that's huge for Dead Infested to get away with that. I was worried that he wouldn't really be able to do too much here, but he's actually been able to do a lot. And his Barghests are going to get cleaned up over here, but the vassals did get, there's some of them were thinned. And the synthetic synod being canceled was a pretty big loss, I think. It's going to be a Stargate instead. I think it's for land effects. Oh, yeah, land effects might be the play. So the Corsair was renamed to the land effect, and Disruption Web was reworked to be Disruption Field, where you toggle between the land effect being able to attack, it can still only attack air, or it projecting Disruption Web around itself. And then you can move the land effect over, say, this stack of Wardens and disable them. Or over air units as well. It disables air unit weapons as well. Here come the vassals. What's the reaction? They're following the Barghests. This small amount of Barghests has made Dead Infested not die immediately to all the vassals. There's 23 vassals again. That's apparently the magic number. A second Stargate being added. A Matrix in the back line. The Barghests can actually just kill the Wardens, I think. Or the one Warden, but they've actually returned home. We have more Barghests being made. Here comes the attack onto the Nexus. Another Warden being made. That's just going to get forced. You should just cancel that, TBH. And, okay, do we have enough Barghests to do some damage here? I'm going to say no. Drakadin could have been a part of that fight. Another one being made. More Barghests about to finish. The Nexus can't really die to these vassals. But we'll see what ends up happening. You gotta kite the Drakadin back a little bit here, I think. Yeah, adding a second one. Great. You could definitely be adding more units to your repertoire here. And closing the gap is a pretty big deal. The vassals are going to try to kill the Nexus, but that was a huge misplay, I think, by 3Crow. Because he's not going to be able to gracefully thin this herd now. And flash shielding starts to kick up on the Nexus, so it's not going to be in danger for too long. Down to 10 vassals. You can easily manage that with the units that are coming out. Vagrants are an excellent choice, though. Vagrants are great. And we're seeing Auroras added to the vassal crew. I don't think Auroras are the best option, to be honest. But, He's actually going to kill the Nexus because of Dead Infested's lackluster response. Yeah, there it goes. So sad that the vassals nibbled him to death. No expansion for you. It is pretty funny to see that, but... Alright, 15 vassals back at home, 4 Auroras. Land effects added to the list. Disable some of these structures. A gateway, second gateway coming out here. DeadInfested is probably very confused. He's never been nibbled to death by vassals before. I'm telling you, man, don't worry. I did the same thing back at him, except I didn't add these cheater units. I only used vassals. Vassals and scribes, that was it. Didn't even proxy him. A little bit of a move out here. DeadInfested feeling apparently somewhat curious. Wants to probe out and see what he can find. By the way, isn't it great that we can say probe without meaning the unit? That's why we renamed it to scribe. Now, as the air units are falling away... Oh, they actually do catch wind of something, it looks like. So they're going to sort of circle back and start attacking these Dracodons. Yeah, this is a pretty scary fleet of fighters. Disruption failed to disable the units on the left-hand side, and it's not being moved around, so they're just dead. GG is called. DeadInfested. He gives up. He can't handle it. He got absolutely brain disabled by 3 Crow's land effects. And yeah, he was in a bit of an awkward spot. So what I can say to DeadInfested is, in the times of crisis, spending your money, building more units, that's a big deal. But also, when you're up against vassals, or any early air for that matter, limit test yourself. Because if the air stuff kills you, then maybe it's the right play to build the static defense. But what if you didn't? What if instead those early vassals, you just warded off with some units? You built your expansion way sooner, you got more money, and then you see that they're still doing it. You rescout, try to get more info and stuff. You see they're still going for mass vassal, and they don't attack you for so long. You've got time to build up. Use the matrix, use the engram. These things just essentially swat these sorts of units out of the sky. On top of it, you can choose to still ignore static defense and build up a really strong ground army. And once you feel confident that you can't be killed, you can just start moving zealots out with 4 or 5 gates or something. You can support more than that even on 2 bases. Suddenly you can just send your zealots out and say, oh, you're going to try to attack my base or harass or look for ways in. Well, I'm just going to kill your base because you don't have enough to, at home to do that. And so then you force their vassals to go back, kind of similar to, TVZ, where you move the ground army out, the bio ball, to force the Zerg player to follow your army with their mutas instead of harassing and attacking you. And that's how the Terran buys time in that situation. So hopefully that kind of gave some insight or a little bit of coaching to Mr. DeadInfested there, which we are happy to have. He's actually playing Protoss. Funnily enough, I wonder why he was playing Protoss. I forgot to ask him that. But he's normally a Zerg player, sometimes a Terran player over in Brood War, like classic Starcraft. I don't know why he's playing Protoss, but hopefully somebody who knows DeadInfested got a kick out of this video. And otherwise, I hope everybody got a kick out of this video. And I'm not talking about the streaming platform, because I'm still only on Twitch and YouTube, but you can check me out on Instagram. JK, I don't have one. You can check me out on Coffee, bottom right link. I'll catch you guys later on for another cast over. Peace!